1st, 2020. This is Jeff Coons with the Gateway Sun, coming to you again with another video installment of the Sun, Gateway Sun TV, as it were. The reason, like always, sometimes we come across these articles and we start putting them together and realize, you know what, it's better for the public to hear the supervisors in their own words. And that's the case here, and it's a major, major issue going on with the Gateway District that will affect every single parcel of land in Gateway, and that is the proposed new assessment methodology that the district has been working on for several years, and it's coming to a head. And because the budget has to be put together here pretty quickly for fiscal 2021, it's really coming down to the last minute thing. Now, that wasn't the intention. They had actually started this months ago, but of course with the COVID-19 pandemic, this really wasn't something that was top of mind for anybody. But it wasn't the intention of them to do this at the last second. That's just the way it worked out with the situation with the virus. So the assessment methodology, I'm sure you can realize, is that it is the formula that they use to calculate how much every landowner or parcel owner in the Gateway District will pay as part of their assessments. The original assessment methodology was done when Gateway was formed in 1986, and it has not changed since. So that's the problem. When Gateway was formed, there were no structures, there were no roads. It was just one big empty field of land. And so the only thing they could go off of was, water management, because there were plenty of ponds. There weren't any houses, but there were plenty of ponds and lakes and stuff like that. So they created the initial assessment methodology based on, that parcel of land's effect on the water management system. They were supposed to, it was written right in the documents, revisit in 1991 or sooner. Within 5 years of the forming of the district, they were supposed to take another look at the assessment methodology. They never did. In 1994, not sure the entire details, but what I could find was that the courts ruled that the way that the new assessment methodology for Gateway District would be on EAU, equivalent acreage unit, which basically means for every household you are considered to be one unit, and for every commercial property it's 1 acre. And they said, okay, for every single house, doesn't matter how big your property is, you're going to pay the same in assessments. And the commercial property, they came up with the number 5.8 for every acre of commercial property. Doesn't matter if there's a building there, whatever, just the size of your property, you're going to pay 5.8 times what a homeowner would pay in their assessments. Okay, so that's the formula that's been in existence for years and years and years. And I've literally heard of nobody who defends it at this point. It may have made sense in 1994. In 1986, they had the other one. But what has happened is Gateway is about 75% developed now. There's lots of roads, lots of buildings, lots of houses, lots of whatever. And so it's been decided that, okay, we need to totally revisit this, because the methodology basing it on the water management system only is not the right way to do it anymore, because there are plenty of structures now. So Gateway hired a consultant named Real Estate Econometrics, and I'm not doing this off a script. I'm just talking. So if I don't get everything exactly perfect, forgive me. But it's a Naples company. The guy behind his name is Russ Wire, and he has 15 years experience doing just this, doing assessment methodologies, updates, or creating them for communities of various sizes, including some as large as Gateway. So this is what this guy does. He's an expert in the field. They hired this guy in 2018, I want to say, and he's been kind of working on this ever since. I think it was January 2020. He delivered his report, and the board is going to get going on it. But as we all know, the pandemic. So that they had the virus was the one that kicked the can down the road this time. But it was obviously a legitimate reason. So they get the report, and what it basically said. Well, actually, before. This should already be adopted, this guy's report, this consultant's report, and I'll tell you what's in it in a second, but this should already be done. This is what this guy does. It's what they hired him to do. I wrote on Facebook he got paid $40,000, but it was said in the meeting it was $30,000, so it's probably a number somewhere in between. I apologize for the discrepancy, but what was said in the meeting, the last meeting on May 21, 2020, was $30,000 is what this guy got paid. So regardless of the number, $30,000 to $40,000. He gets paid this. He does a phenomenal job. You read this thing. This guy calculated to the penny every single property in Gateway, how much he should be paid, how much, he did a phenomenal job and a ton of work. And he presents his report, right? And the supervisors go, well, this we can't present this to the public. We don't understand what's in this document. And if we don't understand, how are we supposed to explain to the residents what this? No, this is coming. It's coming at us way too fast. We can't explain it properly to the residents, so we're just going to kick the can down the road another year. And that wasn't just one supervisor, but it was a couple of them who said the same thing. They were like, we can't explain it to people. Well, fortunately for them and for you, I can explain it to you just fine, because it's really not that difficult to figure out what's going on, and here's what it is. The proposed new assessment methodology is that the consultant took the water management, kept that in there, but then added roads, cost and benefit, and administration for the district, the office, the whatever. So instead of just basing assessments on the effect on the water management system, under this proposal would now be based on the effect on the water management system, but then they add the cost and benefit of the roads and the administrative aspect of the district. Those are the three. We'll go over them one by one. The first, water management. So what the consultant did was, a lot of especially the residential, he was able to get the data from the Lee County property appraiser. So the county provided this specific data. But what they did was they calculated on each parcel how much of the parcel had a structure of any kind, meaning a house or a driveway or whatever, any kind of physical structure, and how much of it was landscaping, lawns, tree, whatever, what have you. Okay, so they call it impervious surfaces. So basically, though, it's anything with a structure and anything no structure. And what they did was they took anything that has a structure and said, okay, all water, rain, I guess, that falls on this property is going to affect the water management system. So any part of a parcel with a structure on it, could be a road, with 100% of the size of that structure was applied against that property. As for the landscaping part, the lawns, anything else, only 20%, because I guess they're assuming that the water hits the property and is absorbed and goes into the grass and does not flow into the water management system. So 100% of structures, 20% of landscaping, calculated property by property by property in Gateway. Okay, so that was how they figured out the cost and the benefit of the water management system in terms of the Gateway District assessments. Second was roads. The consultant, Russ Wires, took data and methods from a group called the Institute of Traffic Engineers, who studied traffic flows all over the country, and they've come up with models. And basically, he calculated each parcels based on the type of the parcel, based on the size, how many trips, meaning how many car trips does that individual parcel contribute to the Gateway road system. And he figured that out for every property, and they calculated that. Okay, so if you are a commercial property with expected 200 cars a day, your road usage, as calculated by the ITE, will be less than, say, a home in Silver Lakes, right? The trip counts are just different depending on each type of property. So they figured out the roads that way based on trip count, using an established third party institution does this all over the place. The final piece of the assessment puzzle is administrative costs, and for that's impossible. Unless the district was to record every phone call they got from who and forward it on that data, and you wouldn't be able to figure out individual parcels administrative costs. So what the Wire did, the consultant, was a even split. Every single property paid paid the same amount for administrative. They just took the administrative cost and split it evenly among every parcel in the district. So we've got the water management system, the roads, and the administrative. And so that is what the new proposed assessment methodology will be based on. It's not that hard. The two effects of it were this. that because some homes, let's just say Royal Greens, are multifamily, meaning there's in Royal Greens there's 3 houses on top of a single piece of property. So obviously those properties have less of an impact on the water management system per acre as a single family house does. So that is why, if you saw, how come all the single family communities have their assessments going down while the single family homes are going up? That's the reason, because they're putting 3 homes on an acre or whatever it is versus a single family home. So they're using that individual property on the 3rd floor is contributing less impact on the water management system than, say, a full-blown house with a big old yard in Stony Brook. Okay, so that's why, if you saw that the single-family homes went up while multi went down, people were mad about that, but that's the explanation for it. They have less of an impact on the water. There's no difference in the administrative, no difference in the roads for multifamily. It's just mostly the water management system. They do have a genuine less effect because they, again, for the 3rd time, they're putting multiple units on the same piece of land. So that was the one effect that people didn't like. The other effect was that the commercial properties went all over the map. And the reason for that is because the consultant did each individual commercial property one by one, figured out the impervious versus pervious land, meaning the buildings versus the agriculture, the landscaping, and calculated for every single commercial parcel in Gateway how much their water impact is, roads impact, etc. That had never been done before. Okay, it was all just based on water, had nothing to do with roads. So you've got some buildings that are going up 5,000, some that are going down 5,000, some I saw one I think went up like 15,000. I wrote it in an article a couple of weeks ago. I identified it. I don't want to put it on here, but I identified it in that article. It's just crazy. And so the big winner, if you want to call it that, is the Gateway Golf and Country Club. And their assessments are going to go down $35,000, and people are not happy, including a couple of the supervisors. But I'm going to explain why their assessments went down so much. When WCI, turned over the golf course, left the community, whatever, they never turned over the lakes and ponds in the Gateway Golf and Country Club to the Gateway Services District. So they've been paying assessments for all these years. And by the way, they should have turned them over. It was even discussed in the May 21st meeting. Has anybody ever heard of a community where the golf course owns ponds or whatever? And no, it doesn't happen in Florida. Nobody's ever seen it before. WCI screwed up. They should have transferred ownership of the lakes and ponds to the Gateway District, because it is the Gateway District's primary function is to look after the community's water system. So that never happened. So the Gateway Golf and Country Club has been paying assessments on the lakes and ponds for all these years, but they shouldn't be. And you may go, wow, let's just let them keep the ponds and the lakes and keep paying the assessments, and then everybody wins. But you don't want to do that, for the reason being, the entire water system in Gateway is one functioning system, and you need a government, one body to look after it, and that has been the Gateway District. To that point, April 2019, there was one pond, Lake 124, had to have some work done on it, and it was $60,000, and it's on the golf course. Do you think the golf course paid that? No. The Gateway District paid that because they want to maintain control over those ponds, because it's vital to everybody in the community. And I had contacted a civil engineer who looked over it, and he 85%, 90% of the water in Gateway flows through that pond on the golf course. So that is something that the district wants to keep tight control over. And while they may not technically own it, they do want to have full control over it, and they could establish legally that they control it, because they've been paying the bills to fix it and maintain it all these years. And if the golf course ever got cute and said, you know what, we're going to assert our authority over these ponds, the district would probably just laugh and go ahead. And now you're going to get assessed for them, and now you're going to pay for all the maintenance. And so nobody wants that. And, the golf course doesn't want responsibility or paying, and the district does, and the district needs it. And so anyway, that's why the assessments went down, is because it is normal for districts to own the ponds. It's not normal in Florida in these situations for golf courses to own ponds, but through a WCI oversight, they had technical ownership, therefore they were paying the assessments. So when you take away those bodies of water out of the land that the golf course has under its whatever paying for assessments, that is why their assessments drop down, and it is absolutely a valid reason to drop them down. And I don't know why people are upset, other than they may not understand it. But I think even some people who do understand it are getting upset just for the point of it. One of those people who got upset was Vice Chairman Bill Guy, and I'm gonna play for you the exchange between Vice Chairman Guy and Supervisor Ed Tinkle, who's been the strongest proponent of the assessment methodology proposals or changes, and is also deeply involved in the golf course. So there's that little, oh, maybe Ed's just doing this for the golf course benefit kind of thing, and maybe that is true, but everybody also agrees. Nobody can argue that the assessment methodology that's being used in Gateway is totally wrong. So even if the golf course happens to be a benefactor of the change had to happen. So anyway, here's a clip of Guy and Tinkle going at it, and you're gonna hear the Gateway attorney Tony Pierce kind of try to interject himself, and then Tinkle shuts him down. But anyway, listen to this.
Supervisor Guy, questions, comments?
Did I hear my name called?
Yes, sir. Questions or comments?
I don't want to be offensive, but if the mission was to reduce the assessment on the golf course and the rest of the chips just fall where they may, you could hardly have done a better job. But when you reduce the assessment on Gateway Golf Course to such an amount, and at the same time increasing the assessment on the churches that we have here, and on a number of our commercial properties by a big number, you're going to get some pushback sooner or later. And the fact that you haven't gotten it yet surprises me, but I think you're going to get it. And the further we go with this thing, the more difficult it's going to be to back off. The other thing is you have entered so many variables into this thing. Trip generations and pervious versus impervious, and all of that business that few of us are really acquainted with, that you've just opened yourself up to more complaints and questions about from anyone whose assessment is going to be increased. And I think you've made it a lot more complex than it needs to be. And I think we ought to take a time out, work the old way into the upcoming budget, and then make an attempt to really hear from our residents before we move forward on anything of this size, scope, and complexity. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was Vice Chairman Guy, all but accusing the consultant of being in the golf course's pocket, essentially. I don't know how else to state that. And Tinkle was not, Supervisor Tinkle was not having any of it. Listen to this.
Comments, questions, Supervisor Tinkle?
Hey, Russ, thanks for the presentation. A couple of things. First, I want to get off the table real quick. Do you have some stock interest in Gateway Golf and Country Club?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No.
Anybody at Gateway Golf and Country Club twist your arm to come up with these numbers?
No.
Okay, glad we got that out of the way. Is this your first rodeo at preparing a assessment methodology?
No, sir.
How many years you been doing this, Russ?
15?
So in 15 years, I'm assuming you've done quite a few of these, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is the Gateway methodology typical of a methodology for a community of the size and type that Gateway is?
Yes, it is. I've done a couple of very large communities like that, Westlake on the East Coast in particular, done basically the same way. But we adjust it every year.
Thank you. What's the difference between what we're doing here in the way of an assessment methodology versus, as you were heard, or maybe you didn't hear at all, a position taken of a tax knowledge? What's the difference between what you're doing here and a tax assessment would be done?
Well, first of all, a tax is not an assessment. They are separate. A tax, first of all, a tax is what is usually done on the property on the property value, and then they apply the millage to that, and then it's done across the property values, and it has to go to a referendum. An assessment is not a referendum. It's because there are differences in the taxes, in the assessments.
Thank you. Have you ever done an assessment methodology in Florida where we have, throughout Florida, seasonal versus full-time, where a assessment methodology has taken into consideration seasonal versus full-time people?
I have not done that, no.
Have you ever heard of one?
I have not heard of one either.
Have you ever heard of one that takes into consideration widows and senior citizens versus other people?
Not an assessment methodology, no.
Thank you. Is the existing system that we have, which is stormwater based, fair and equitable in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, I think it really needed to be updated because it's not the appropriate measurement for your roadways or for administration. It truly was done for water management because when it was initially applied, it made sense. Now you have different categories that really need to be measured differently. And what you're trying to determine is the benefit you're receiving from the capital improvement program and the maintenance of those capital improvements. Therefore, if you're going to measure a roadway, you got to measure it by. Here's another good example. If you're submitting into a county, for instance, to get some entitlements on a piece of land, you're not going to measure the traffic generation going by your water management. You're just not going to do it that way. It's just not. That's not fair and equitable.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the both the two golf courses. Was the method that was done where those two community or those two entities were assessed based on their water and wetland acreage, was that fair and equitable?
Well, the thing is they were, the ownership of the land underneath, in the lakes was actually on the golf courses. So they were being assessed on those acres. Now to me, they're a part of the water management system. You don't assess the water management system.
Thank you. Thank you. If this would be delayed, this decision would be delayed, which I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it from being delayed. This board did everything it could to kick the can down the road 2 years ago for the very same reasons we're making today. We kicked it down the road last year for the very reasons we're trying to make today. I think we've gone down the road far enough of kicking this can. We've hired a professional consultant. We have never, on any of our professional consultants, gone out and made a statement as ridiculous that we're going to go out and have citizen input to challenge a professional consultant's opinion. What the hell did we spend $30,000 for? This is ridiculous. Have you ever had this done before, Russ?
No, Mr. Tinkle, I have not. And normally they will, I've had CDDs come to me and say, here's the situation, and they've had, here's what we need to do, but in terms of how I go about doing it, they rely on my professional opinion to do it.
Russ, in your professional opinion, we are successful and I am unsuccessful in stopping this from being kicked down the road. And we go to August and we are left with the assessment methodology that we currently have. What's going to happen when we are challenged by those that are unfairly impacted by the current assessment methodology, which we have certainly demonstrated very well of its fallacies? What are we going to do when we're challenged on that? Are you going to come out and say that the system that we have, current system that we have, is fair and equitable?
I would hope, Madam Chairman, what I would suggest is if
Yes,
someone
please.
wants to challenge that, I don't think
It's my turn, Tony.
no, but I don't think it's appropriate to ask the district's consultant whether or not the district will win or lose litigation when this is not his role.
And
Agreed.
It would be an expert opinion, Tony. You're not a board member, Tony.
I understand that, but I'm the legal advisor, and I'm giving legal advice, and the board
Well,
can't.
I want to have the residents challenge that legal advice.
Gentlemen, if
This is
you had asked
ridiculous,
me
guys.
that question, I would have deferred to legal counsel on that, because it's not my opinion.
If asked, Russ, at a meeting, is the system that we currently have, in your professional opinion, is the system we have currently fair and equitable to all parties?
Mr. Tinkle, you asked me that before, and I said it's just one measurement that is not appropriate for the different types of capital improvements that you have, and also the operations and maintenance of those capital improvements.
I would agree. At this point in time, my thing is that we have brought in the expertise of a professional who has done this. Quite obvious, he has done it before. This isn't his first rodeo. I think we take his professional opinion and run with it. If we start getting into dividing up this community to try to make perfect, that we satisfy the widows, the singles, the seasonals, the people that don't have kids, the people who don't use the parks, the people who don't do this, the people who has 2 cars, the people that have 8 cars, we are going to pull our hair out trying to come up with a methodology. I believe that the methodology that Russ has put is very fair, very equitable. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I don't think you're going to find perfect in Gateway, but it is a heck of a lot better than the system we have right now. And I am very fearful that when we go to an August meeting and we don't bring in a system that is fair and equitable with the documents that we have prepared and have as public, we are going to be challenged by the commercials, and we're going to be challenged by the residentials, and we're going to be challenged by the golf courses.
Point of order, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Is there any time limit on this, or should I order lunch or dinner in?
Go get lunch.
I understand I understand what you're saying, Mr. Guy, but this is a huge endeavor for the board to take up in the community to have this big a change. This is a huge change. I tend to agree. Excuse me?
I didn't know
Are
that
you
I
finished,
had
Mr.?
time yet.
We haven't. I understand his concern, but we need to vet this.
I believe that we have vetted it for 3 years. I believe we've hired a professional. We've spent a lot of money.
Mr. Tinkle, I believe I have the floor. I have the floor. You finished. I have the
No, I
floor.
wasn't finished,
Actually,
Margaret.
Margaret,
I
I
wasn't
think
finished.
Bill interrupted Ed.
I'm sorry?
I think Bill interrupted Ed.
Okay. Please finish, Mr. Tinkle, so I can have my say.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I'm saying is that we've hired a professional who is quite knowledgeable in this field, and he has done what I believe to be a one hell of a job in a very difficult issue. I don't know how you're going to get anything that's going to be any better. I don't care how many committees and how many people you put together. This is very complicated issue that he's dealing with. Notwithstanding the fact that we give him data from 2019 to show his data when it should have been the 2020 data, and when in reality, it's going to be based upon 2020 numbers that we have yet to determine. My thing is that we totally immediately proceed with going with the recommendations of our consultant. I'm done, Margaret.
Okay, thank you.
Oh man, I've listened to that 3 times now, and it does not get old. So what's next for all of this? On June 4th, this coming Thursday, the Gateway District is going to have its meeting at 3, and then they're going to have a special meeting. They're going to set up seatings inside one of their maintenance bays. If you may have heard that they were going to hold this meeting on the soccer field, but they scrapped that plan. It's going to be at the district's location. They're going to have the video feeds. As I understand it, some of the supervisors may be in the boardroom in person, social distancing, all that, and some of the other supervisors may be at their home doing the Zoom meeting or however the online participation. They'll have the seats set up with social distancing, and anybody who wants to have who wants to listen or has questions about this can attend that. And that again is on June 4th at 5 p.m. at the district's facility. It's this is going to be round 2. I mean, I mentioned that this was going to be contested, and round 1, as you heard, was pretty heated, especially between Guy and Tinkle. And round 2 is going to be no easier. But I don't understand what's going on, because, like I mentioned to you before, this consultant has 15 years experience. They hired him to do just this. If they think they're going to hire another consultant who's going to come up with something totally radical, then, maybe try that. But it sounds like what this guy did was pretty... Well, if you look at the report and you go through it, and I can see from the supervisor's point of view where they go property by property, and they've got all these numbers. One house is $407.12, one is $398.52 or whatever it is, and there's a lot. But when you look at it the simplified way, water management, roads, and administration. And what they did, and I apologize when I mentioned this before, but they took all of the property by properties and they kind of just adjusted it to the same way they do it now. They said, okay, They said that we're going to have 2 classes. We're going to have multifamily. We're going to have single family. And every single family house is going to pay the same. And every multifamily house is going to pay the same. So it's simple. They took the 3 things. They created the 2 classes for residential, 1 class for commercial. That's it. It's not hard. I don't understand why the supervisors are all going like, well, I don't know if I can explain this to anybody. Why not? It's not that difficult. You guys heard it here. I'm sure everybody understands what they're doing. What they're just not happy at is that, honestly, this is my opinion, is that they're not happy that Supervisor Tinkle is the one leading the charge on this. Anything that guy comes up with, they tend to resist. And I've resisted, you guys know, I've resisted ideas from Supervisor Tinkle time and time again, because I call balls and strikes. And when Supervisor Tinkle is wrong, I tell him. And when Supervisor Tinkle is right, I tell him. And I think he's on the money with this. This consultant is a 15-year professional from Florida, from Naples, does this all the time. What he came up with was honestly not that radical. It just logical, basic in my view. He did all the work and got the complicated, but then they dumbed it down to the 2 classes, because you can't have one property paying this and that and then having the staff try to track it all. And so they just have the 1 amount for single family, 1 amount for multifamily now. Works for me. So I don't understand why the supervisors are pretending this is a big deal, and why they can't go to this June 4th meeting, listen to any concerns, and just vote to approve it or not approve it. But there's no reason to delay this any further, in my view. They've been working on this since at least 2018, and some people have said for 3 years. So maybe there was some internal work done at the district that I'm not aware of, but I know this consultant's been around since at least 2018 working on this project. So it's time to go. So June the 4th at the district's headquarters, I'm going to post exact details. The district manager, Chris Shoemaker, sent me the exact details earlier today. So I'm going to go through that email and I'll post it on like the 3rd on Wednesday, so you guys can have that if you're interested in going. But we'll see what happens. My prediction is that they will kick the can down the road. That they will disregard the simplicity of it if and just say, oh, it's coming at us too fast. The budget is too soon. And we have to wait. We can't do it. We can't. And that's what they did last year. It's exactly what they did last year. It was close to budget time. So this year they wised up. Like, I don't mean to repeat myself, but this year they wised up and started it way earlier in the year. And then COVID-19. So they lost months of time, or else this probably would have been resolved this fiscal year. But it may have to be pushed back to next fiscal year and dealt with what will almost certainly be a different board. If you catch my drift, there's an election coming up and there's going to be some changes on the Board of Supervisors. So we'll see what happens. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully I was able to articulate with some degree of clarity what the proposed new assessment methodology is going to be. Unfortunately, it does mean that if you live in a single family home, your assessments will go up, and then they're going to actually go up a second time when the actual budget, this is just the methodology of how they calculate it. They haven't even done the actual budget where they, outline their projects that they want to do and the expenses that have been increased and whatever else. And so you guys are going to get kicked. If you live in a single family home, you're going to get kicked twice. If you live in the commercial, you're either going to be loving this when your assessments go down $8,000, or you're going to be screaming bloody murder when they go up 12. It just depends on the property. What the consultant has done is just created a formula and applied it without passion, without bias toward all properties in Gateway, and said this is what it is, this is how the numbers read. And any other consultant that they hire, if they choose to hire a second to verify this guy's work, is going to come up with the same thing. It may not be the exact same whatever, but it's going to be the same type of approach where everything is approached with no passion, no bias, just numbers, and the numbers will fall where they may. And I have a feeling that because it's never been done anywhere in Florida that anybody's ever aware of, where golf courses pay for ponds on their property, that no matter who they hire, unless they give them the specific order to increase, the golf course is going to decrease. So what's the point of wasting another $30,000-$40,000 on another consultant when this report seems to be perfectly fine? But this has been Jeff Kuntz for the Gateway Sun, talking about the assessment methodology proposed changes. Please log on Wednesday, and I will give you full details for the Thursday meeting for those who are interested in attending. Again, it'll be Thursday, June 4th, 5 p.m.